Aaron Layman Properties here. Time for another North Texas housing market update. Denton County home prices have so far failed to recapture their 2022 highs. Official NTREI stats show that the median home prices in Denton County were 7% or roughly $35,000 lower than May of last year. Average prices were down 6.8% or $40,000 from a year ago. Home sales in the area were down 3.9% from the same time. Stagnant sales volume remains a theme, with 6 and 7% mortgage rates taking a bite out of affordability for many prospective buyers. Pending contracts in Denton County were 7% lower year over year in May. Available home inventory edged up to 2.1 months of supply, and average days on market fell, while average percent of list price edged up to 97.7%. There's no denying that we have seen a solid rebound in the real estate market this spring, heading into the peak summer selling season. The spring rebound has many agents and industry figures talking about a soft landing. Many are hoping that the real estate market is bottom because they want prices to resume climbing higher. Who doesn't love higher home prices, right? The spring rebound for the housing market is really not surprising if you've been paying attention. The Fed has done a miserable job of shrinking that bubble-blowing balance sheet. There's still a massive amount of artificial stimulus and household spending power, courtesy of trillions in market interventions and supports during the pandemic, and even this spring during the banking crisis. Now that the debt ceiling standoff has been resolved, the liquidity drain will again become more noticeable. It is worth noting the Fed's balance sheet runoff, aka quantitative tightening, hasn't been nearly as sharp as the buildup. This helps explain why asset prices have remained elevated even in the face of rising interest rates. The White House and the Federal Reserve have been working overtime to keep the illusion going. Net liquidity to the markets has actually been rising for a good chunk of 2023. They are working on borrowed time. Solid employment growth through the first half of 2023 has kept the recession at bay. The employment engine of the U.S. has been firing on all cylinders for the most part. That has kept wage growth elevated while keeping unemployment near record lows. It also means the Federal Reserve has to keep rates higher than they originally planned. Once you let that inflation genie out of the bottle, it doesn't like to go back without an extended battle. Behind the veneer of low unemployment, initial weekly jobless claims are trending higher. The second half of 2023 is shaping up to be similar to last year in terms of the real estate market. The fourth quarter of 2022 was marked by a shock in the pronounced rise in rates. This year we're looking at another decrease in consumer purchasing power and demand, but for different reasons. The jobs engine is starting to show some cracks. Initial weekly unemployment claims are rising as companies run into roadblocks in terms of how much they can push the envelope on prices. Companies are beginning to cut hours, and then they start cutting employees. That's just how the cycle works. Another interesting wrinkle is that student loan payments are scheduled to resume in September, just as the economy and employment sector are softening. That should curb demand for homes in the fourth quarter of the year. Mortgage interest rates, for their part, are back to near 7% mark for many prospective buyers. Still no property tax relief from Austin. As I predicted at the start of the year, the Texas Legislature has served up a big donut for property tax relief. The market value of your home is likely lower than last year, while your property tax bill is going to be higher. Isn't it ironic? The miscreants in Austin have actually done worse than I expected. They have managed to shaft teachers, students, and Texas homeowners in one legislative session. As I predicted would happen, Abbott and his colleagues tried to ram school vouchers down the throats of voters while holding actual property tax reform hostage. Abbott managed to throw teachers and students under the bus in the process. It's beyond entertaining that Abbott went so far as to state that he wanted to end property taxes in Texas. The Houston Chronicle was smart enough to catch that delusional fantasy for what it was. What Abbott really meant was that he wanted to end property taxes for his wealthiest donors, or at least keep the generous loopholes in place which allow them to avoid paying property taxes in the system experienced by most Texas homeowners. Austin leadership wants to avoid a state income tax at all costs because that would upset the virtuous cycle of corporate welfare dispensed in the name of economic development. Abbott isn't going to end the gravy train for the property tax consultants, attorneys, and real estate industry players anytime soon because they help to keep the campaign coffers filled. Change can be slow, but people will eventually catch on to the show when you show them the cold, hard facts. Many Denton County homeowners are waking up to how the system is rigged at the expense of the many in favor of the few. With property taxes on homes hitting record highs again this year, some residents are beginning to question if it's all really worth it. The reality is that many Denton County property owners pay little to nothing when it comes to property taxes. In a county with a huge number of agricultural exemptions on the books, this puts significant pressure on local services and schools. The funding has to come from somewhere, and when many property owners are allowed to opt out of the system for taxes, that puts more pressure on appraisal districts to make up for the revenue shortfall. Local homeowners are often left picking up the tab for many of those exemptions. An inquiry with the Denton Central Appraisal District confirmed there are 11,421 properties in Denton County with an ag exemption of some form. Some of the most valuable properties in the area are recipients of generous exemptions, allowing the owners to pay little to nothing in property taxes, while average homes are now getting hit with property tax bills of $10,000 or more. There are literally billions in prime Denton County real estate being wiped from the tax rolls. The actual numbers were shocking when I looked. According to the Denton Central Appraisal District, the appraised market value on ag-exempt properties in Denton County was $8,786,000,000 for 2023. That's billion with a B. The appraisal district's ag use value was only $20.59 million for that same property. That's $8.76 billion in property effectively wiped from the tax rolls just this year. Applying a conservative 2.1% tax rate for local property, that equates to $184 million in potential tax revenue vaporized for the benefit of various landowners. If you were wondering where the cat is making up for that lost tax revenue and all those exemptions, just look at the property tax bill in your home. There are valid reasons for property owners in legitimate agricultural business to receive exemptions. Rural farmers and ranchers in Texas often depend on these important exemptions to make a living. That's what makes it so sad to see many property owners taking advantage of the system simply so they can avoid property taxes or speculate on rising property prices. That $5 million parcel down the road paying little to nothing in taxes is a great deal for the corporation, private equity group, or family trust sitting on land for future development or just accumulating wealth. It's a blight on those non-exempt property owners and rural farmers and ranchers in the area. You won't hear Abbott or Patrick mention these inconvenient facts in any special session. They have other agendas they are pushing. Neither one of them wants real property tax reform or uniform and equal appraisal in Texas. They just want their friends and donors to have the best outcomes in a comically dysfunctional system. It's not just the abuse of exemptions which makes the property tax system a charade. We still have a system in Texas where the comptroller tells residents we have uniform and equal appraisal when some of the most valuable property in the state is appraised and taxed at less than half of market value. While Abbott and Patrick were busy with their fake political posturing this spring, the JW Marriott Resort in San Antonio sold for $800 million. The interesting part is that the Bexar County Appraisal District shows the resort was appraised and assessed at a 2023 market value of $370 million. That's a 53% discount. Imagine what would happen to Abbott and Patrick's property tax relief discussion if the state constitution mandated every home in the residential homestead exemption was required to be assessed and taxed at only 46% of market value.